All right. Hello, everyone. I'll do a quick recap for those that are watching this after the fact. My name is Zach Daniel. I'm the author of Ash Framework, which is a resource-oriented general purpose application framework for Elixir. And today we are doing the 2.0 release. We'll be doing it live, which does not involve much work, just going to run a couple commands. But let me fix the fact that my audio is playing back in my ears. One second. All right. Cool. Um, so yeah, we're gonna do the release today. We're gonna just have a little conversation about with anybody that wants to join about Ash. Any questions they might have. We could do things like design advice. We could do things like why should I use Ash or why shouldn't I use Ash? Anything like that. I'm open to any and all questions. Um, but yeah, so we're probably going to leave a little bit of time for people to just sort of trickle in and ask their questions. Um, but once we have at least, we'll see if people show up or not. But once we have some people here, we'll do the Reese. So let's pull up chat, make sure I see anything that comes in. Pull up the Discord in case anybody's watching from Discord. And feel free if you can't hear me or anything like that, or if there's audio issues, just let me know. Okay, let's see. All right, I'll copy this link. I'll put it out into Twitter. Where is the link? All right. We've got Brett in chat here who wants to know when Ash 3.0 is. If I have anything to say about it, it's going to be a very long time from now because 2.0 has been a monumental effort. That's for sure. But I think realistically, like the we worked really hard to get the patterns ready and stable and battle tested. And so realistically, I can't imagine us having significant changes that would require like a 3.0 for multiple years. Like it's not really that kind of framework where all of a sudden you're gonna have to change up your whole world like every time a new version of React Router gets released or something, and now you have to like rewrite all your routes or whatever it is. So yeah, that's the answer to that. Hopefully not for a very long time. All right, let's tweet about this. Okay. And I haven't really done any of the work that goes into making the release, actually doing it live. So what I'll do is I have my terminal set up and we can do it together when it's time. Um, we'll start by releasing Ash Core, and then we will release uh, a couple of the other packages that are going to get bumped out to 1.0. And we'll sort of go from there. Let's see. Oh, those are my text messages. Okay, let's take a look. Right. Hey, John. Thanks for joining. Yeah, thanks for the congrats. It has been a very big effort by a lot more people than just me, and I have a lot of other people to thank for it. Alembic bringing me on to work on Ash pretty much full time has been a lifesaver, um, and they've had a big push because they've got so many people using it. A big push for a lot of quality of life things like the new documentation site at Ash HQ, tons more documentation, lots of quality of life, doing more of what's expected features, things like that. And so just having like a large group of people adopting it sort of all at once has been a really positive influence, which is really exciting. So, and thank you, Florius. I've seen you around the Discord and stuff. Thank you for the kind words. Let's see. How do I see how many people are in? Like, I don't know when I should start this thing or not. Let's see, we've got, I don't know, some people here. Doesn't tell me. That's fine. Doesn't really have to be. It's all recorded, so people can watch it if they want. Let's let's dive in. Let's do what we got to do. It's not going to be very much, honestly. All right. So we're all up to date, and let me do. That's right. I'm not sharing my screen. I need to share my screen. All right. Let's open up VS Code, and let's just poke around and make sure things are in a good state. So we're on a release candidate branch. All right. What are the biggest changes from Ash 1.0 to Ash 2.0? In reality, there's not like it's kind of hard. We've done a slow roll all the way up to 2.0, and a lot of the community has been on the bleeding edge. They've been living on the release candidates in the main branches, and they've been pretty stable. But the main thing is that we got tons of big changes out of the way, and I think the that was sort of the one of the big pushes that we had. Let me go ahead and add my webcam to this so that you guys can see me. Video capture. And let's tell it to use this. All right, and now I need to resize this. I don't know how to do this. I'm not a streamer of, if you guys will, if you can tell. Let's see. All right. So I think a lot of the big changes are the real changes that matter is actually down to stability. It's all of these like low hanging fruit, or not low hanging fruit, but changes that didn't change a lot, but required like breaking changes. So like we changed a lot of the DSL to make it more predictable and conventional, that kind of thing. Um, but most of the people who have been using Ash they've all been using these new features. So I would say from the people who tried out Ash like a while ago, there's just been, I guess, uncountable, honestly, the amount of features that really do unlock potential, like new customization. There's, manual relationships that allow you to customize how they are joined. Um, we've done a lot of improvements to policy authorization. Um, we've got a lot of extensions now. Like we have some interesting extensions that are sort of in the works and complete. We have like Ash Archival, which is sort of a good example of an extension that you mix it into a resource and it just makes that resource soft delete instead of archive instead of actually deleting, and it's sort of like a one-liner that shows sort of the power of what you can how deeply you can extend things with an extension. And then we've also got an even sort of bigger one. It's not released yet, but it's open source. It's up there on GitHub, but it is Ash Paper Trail, and Ash Paper Trail takes that even one step further. It doesn't do soft delete. You could use that in tandem with Ash Archival to do soft delete. But Ash Paper Trail will automatically create and manage a resource that stores every version on change of a resource. And you can get it essentially in one line. You just say, use Ash Paper Trail. And if you're using the Ash Postgres migration generator, it'll automatically generate the table to store those versions in. You don't have to do any of that stuff. So you get quite a bit of bang for your buck there. And I would say the other big thing is Ash HQ, right? I think not a lot of people have probably the people who are currently using Ash have had a chance to check this out, but I'll just kind of show this. So Ash HQ is a new documentation site, and we're still doing lots of work on it. There's still lots of things to improve, but what we've done is we've made it possible to we've aggregated the different packages that exist, right? And we can add more. This is a dynamic system, so it's quite easy to add more packages. And you can select, your version for a set of these packages, and then you can search across, like you were getting hex search. You can search across everything, right? So I can say, if I wanted to see, like, show me attribute, um, and you can see I guess we still need to work on the search algorithm here. But you can see like you can find everything that contains attribute in it. And you can also do things like search through the code. So like, ash.change set, like change attribute, um, this kind of thing. I was just making some tweaks to search, so that's probably why this is a little bit less good than it has been. But and then you can search across, even like all of our new guides, and I'll show you what I mean here. Um, if you open up the documentation, we've got a like a whole new. It's not like a book style. It doesn't take you on a journey, so to speak. It's something that we're still going to work on, but we've got tons of topical guides on how to do various things. Um, and you also have these spread out across libraries, right? So if I add more libraries here, then I'm going to get more documentation here in the sidebar, and you can see like the DSL is fully documented, showing examples, explaining every option that you have. Um, and then you also have code docs, just like hex docs, right? So I can go down here and I can browse through the documentation, just like I would in hex. But what's nice is I get all of this across every Ash package that we have. So uh, that's I think those are the big changes for people who have had some experience with Ash but are just coming back to it now for 2.0. All right, let's go ahead and actually release this thing. So we're going to start with Ash Core. We're going to release it to 2.0, and then we'll point the new packages at it and release those. So I actually have this kind of down and set up in a way that's pretty easy. I have a separate project I wrote called Mixed GitOps, or called GitOps, that automates the production of a new version. So like it looks at all of the commits since the last release and figures out what the new version will do. Flores wants to know if there well, first comments on the docs being quite cool, but wants to know if there's any framework to build small hex docs like this for multiple packages. So the idea is that Ash HQ will eventually support. It's kind of a superset of hex docs where it also supports Spark is the underlying tooling, also part of Ash, but we separated out so people could build high quality DSLs and stuff like that. And so the way it works is Spark exposes this thing called a doc index that allows you to that effectively allows you to kind of do how you'd like configure Xdoc, right? And so we use that and a combination of the same techniques that they use with Xdoc to build this documentation. And Ash HQ is open source, right? So the only thing is it's not going to be super ergonomic, but what you could do is you could just clone Ash HQ, modify the seeds file to point it like to say, okay, we're tracking these three hex dependencies. Like you could even run this for yourself locally if you just wanted hex search across like 3 or 4 different things. But the main thing is that you would need to. It's not made easy quite yet. Those packages would, at the moment, they would need to support a Spark doc index to figure out what all their guides are. And there's a couple things you have to do to get it right. Like your released versions have to correspond to a tag in GitHub and stuff. So, but I think honestly, if somebody wanted to sort of push that project and make Ash HQ something that anybody could use to index, multiple packages, it would be easy. It's all hand rolled on top of Ash Postgres, and so that's full text search in Postgres. So there's no like external service that you need. Like you don't have to like have an Algolia license or something like that to run it. So yeah, I would say that we're at the start of something that could be used by anybody to group multiple packages together. But you have to host it somewhere and that kind of thing. So Hexdocs is great. It's an amazing tool. Like I don't want to make it seem like I have a problem with Hexdocs because it's free and it's an amazing service for the community. But if you have a big project spanning a bunch of packages, it can be difficult because your users don't know where to look for documentation. Okay, so yeah, GitOps looks at all your commits since the last release and will. Let me make sure that my stream is showing you guys. Yeah, okay, you can still see this. So it will, look at all your commits, figure out what your next version ought to be. And what I've been doing is I've been running it with the --rc flag. Again, this is actually open source too. So if you want, people are using GitOps all over the place for managing their releases. But so the RC flag would release in this case. It would give us a new. It would give us a new RC 16 or something. But I'm going to run it without RC, and we should get if it's going to behave, we should get a 2.0 release. Oh, we get 2.1.0. That's a pain. I thought this might happen actually because it has to do with the fact that there are feature commits in here. It's not a big deal. What I will do is I will not commit and tag, and I will do this. I will do some massaging here to change this to 2.0.0. It's not too big of a deal. I've lost my mouse. Here it is. Okay. And in the change log, we have 2.0.0. And let's actually have this. This should be the diff from. Well, yeah, actually, I guess we'll do this from the latest non-RC release like this, because I believe that this again, most people aren't using the release candidates feature on GitOps, and so I think they're not having this problem. But all right, and this is 2.0.0, and this looks good. So now what I'm going to do, I think we're just gonna let this. It'll show the diff here, but if you want to see all the changelog, I guess you'd have to go back through the release candidates. I can clean up the changelog later. This is just a markdown file, so I'm not really worried about making this exactly perfect right now, because all the information is in there. It's just in each of the release candidate blocks. But this will be some work I can do on GitOps to make it a little bit more ergonomic. And okay, so we are going to do this number and modify this. Release version 2.0.0. Florius is enjoying. Oh, I did something strange here. Enjoying GitOps. Yeah, so John wants to know about starting a Greenfield project, and yeah, honestly, there was actually an interesting thing. Brett, who's in the chat, actually did a really interesting thing there. They were working on a sort of it's a pretty small app. I can show it to you guys, but it's quite interesting, and it's I think a testament to a sort of a good way of starting a new project. And maybe he can speak to it a little bit more in the chat. So what Brett actually did is pretty interesting. He started this Todoish app using resources, and there's no database. It was all using the built-in ETS or ETS data layer. And he actually published it. He had it deployed and everything. And it's just the data, you would lose the data if the app restarted. But he got the whole thing working like that. And then all he had to do to get it, once he had the proof of concept of doing it with ETS, he went in and just changed the resources to Ash Postgres, and you didn't have to really change anything else about the app. And that's, I think, a good testament to the separation of concerns, where resources, like it's not like a sort of ORM where it's meant to map directly to a data layer. It's just that you can back a resource with a data layer, right? And so in the cases where you do that, it's nice to be able to just swap. In terms of the sequence, like adding all the various pieces, it really depends on what you're building. Like if you were building something that focuses a lot on live UI, then oftentimes what you'd end up doing is you'd write your resources, you'd test that your sort of domain behaves the way that you want with the basic actions, right? So like that you can add a to-do list, like add resources and actions, right? And then at that point, you're building a live UI, so you're probably going to get into Phoenix. You want to use Phoenix Live View, or you want to use, if you're using an API, then honestly, most of this stuff well, I guess if you're using an API, then you're going to hit up PubSub first, because you're going to want to have some way to communicate live events to that external API. But yeah, it all kind of depends on what you need. I do agree that Ash is quite sprawling, but it kind of, for the most part, has a piece for all of these things, or it allows you to just use regular old Elixir if you don't have, so if you can't find a tool in a toolbox, it does its best to not stop you from just doing something else, right? It's why it's just a Elixir library that you can use. It's not like an app or like a no code tool or something. Um, Thank you, Sang, for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Um, so yeah, anyway, this is just a nice sort of simple example. It uses PubSub. So if I were to share this list with somebody else, you can see. Oh, I lost my browsers. Uh, yeah. So if I were to share this list, um, what I would see here is something like if I add something like new stuff and I add it, then it goes across. And this is all open source. Again, I'm sure that Brett can talk a little bit more about it. Um, where did I lost my chat? Let's see. Okay, cool. Let's see. Is there a bug in ETS and amnesia data layers? It writes serialized terms. I'm not sure. I mean, of course, there could be a bug with the internal stuff, but it writes serialized terms in ETS amnesia. It makes little sense. Oh, you mean if you have like you can have there's an Ash type that is called term, and if you do that, then it serializes the term um, as term to binary. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, any issues like will get addressed right away. So if you spotted an issue in the built-in ETS or amnesia data layers, throw it up on GitHub and I'll take care of it. Um, so yeah, and you can actually see all this open source. I don't have the link, but I'm sure Brett has it. Maybe you could drop it in chat if he wants. But the code for this is all there, and this is a nice little foundation. I think it's a great sort of kicking off point for an app, and also with that in mind. Ash HQ is all open source. So Ash HQ, you can go see all the source code for that. It's all written with Ash resources. So you can go see like, for instance, a guide in the docs is an Ash resource. So you can go and you can see uh, how all that looks. You can see what it looks like. There's custom extensions that we've written, like render markdown to render the guide text as markdown. Or as HTML. And we've got a search extension that is what powers the search box. So there's a lot of sort of higher level stuff in there that's worth taking a look at. Um, and yeah, so Flores, actually, that's kind of an interesting thing to point out. The way that types work is they currently aren't given the opportunity to cast differently, or to cast their data differently depending on the data layer that's being cast to. So it has to do term to binary if you were doing if you were using the term type, because we don't actually know, you might be writing that term to Postgres, right? So that's the reason it does that. But I think it's kind of an interesting idea. Like the the simplest way to do that right now is if you wanted a term type that doesn't do that because you're using the ETS data layer and you don't need it, then you could write a custom type that just returns the value, and then the ETS data layer will store it. You just could only use that with the ETS data layer. But it is an interesting concept that we could inform the type of what data layer they are serializing to and from, uh, to let them make that choice at the type level. That's a pretty interesting idea. I'll have to look into that. All right. So we are going to. Okay, did we already do this? Did we release? Yeah, okay, we released 2.0. Let's tag it 2.0.0. Why does it get tag dash A? Oh, here we go. And we will push this up. Now, if everything goes according to plan, the CI should actually deploy this in like, I don't know, 15 minutes or something when it builds everything. But I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I think I closed my tabs. Let me open up a new tab here. Uh, okay, and we'll go see. We'll go monitor this. There's a flaky test in Ash GraphQL because I'm working on it. It's a thing with absinthe that I want to fix. So that could theoretically fail the build, but I think that's not going to happen. So one of these will pass, and it will release it, and it will make a tweet, and that would be the exciting process of releasing Ash 2.0. But this is a nice thing to have in place because we make sure everything's tested before we deploy. And if it goes wrong, I'll just deploy it from the command line because why not? All right. Well, while we wait, does anybody have any other questions for me? Talking to Siri. Here, I'll switch it back to just look at my face while we wait on this build. Actually, I guess this has nice dramatic suspense while we sit here watching this build. It's like watching paint dry. Oh, we got a check mark. Thank you very much. I'm going to mangle your name, but I think it is the Michaelis. Thank you very much. I think we're all very excited. I think I'm excited to get more people's hands on this. It's been quite the effort. I'm also, I think one thing that is going to be good is things are going to slow down just a little bit in the right ways. For a long time, Ash was sort of, oh, it's that flaky test in Ash GraphQL. It got us. There it is. It'll deploy anyway, actually. This isn't a requirement for the deploy. These sub-project tests. So we want to slow down, I think, in the right ways. We want to, we're working off of a roadmap now. I'll show you guys the roadmap. As opposed to just sort of like me doing the next important thing, we've got a roadmap that'll show you sort of you can really see like up next soon someday, get a picture of where things are going. And as we get new things in, they're going to go on the roadmap, generally speaking. It's a good question about a visual editor for the resources. We don't have anything like that now. What we do have, there's no reason why that can't exist. But what we do have, and actually Josh at Alembic, who is actually my boss now, he hired me to work on Ash full time, as I mentioned. He's been doing some really cool stuff with live books and mermaid charts, right? So I forget how to pull up. Honestly, I haven't really used Livebook in a while. Let's see. I think I can pull it up like localhost. It's got like a big long path. Yeah, I don't know. Hold on. Well, most importantly, let me see if I can pull it up actually, because there is a tool. All right, can somebody tell me how I can use how I can I've got the Livebook app running. This is again, I haven't really used much Livebook, but I've got the Livebook app running, and I'm not sure how to actually get to the Livebook. Do I run is it like Livebook server? Oh, of course. Uh, okay, I don't know what's going on with this not working, but whatever. It's not important for right now. What is important is we have a bunch of features that have just gone in for showing live books. I can show you an example of like the sort of mermaid charts that we're generating for Ash.flow. So Ash.flow is a relatively new kid on the block. It's our sort of declarative workflow language, and it has pluggable backends. There's only one backend right now, and it uses the internal Ash engine. But you can see, for example, that we generate mermaid charts from these workflows. And so you can see this is like what happens in that workflow, and you can see this is what the workflow itself looks like. It uses an Ash DSL, and then it has like steps. You can nest flows together. You can have custom steps, that sort of thing. It supports a lot. It's pretty new, so kind of Not necessarily here be dragons, but you know, you'll be a pioneer if you, or one of the early pioneers if you use it. Ash HQ uses it for search. Uh, ASDF reshim. All right, let's take a look. All right, ASDF reshim and live book server. It's still not working. I don't know what I've done. Uh, it's fine. Well, I guess I could click on this livebook.dev button to host a to launch on fly.io. Oh, this is gonna be a pain. I don't want to do that. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's out there though. It's in master or it's in main. It's actually going to be in the 2.0 release. So check it out. I feel bad for Josh because he worked really hard on it, and I'm not doing it justice, but it is quite cool. Um, it'll generate diagrams of the whole API that you have and all that sort of stuff. So let's take a look. Did our release happen? Let's see. We've got some more questions in here. Is it feasible to integrate? Let's see. Did this release? Okay, the release didn't happen in here. Maybe I think it might be this one that does the release. Yeah, it's going. So is it feasible to integrate Ash in an existing project side by side with existing resource? Um, yeah, I mean, people are doing that. Coinbits is one of our sponsors. They've done that. They've integrated Ash side by side. You can back a resource with anything you want. So you can have a custom resource that just does custom actions, and then you're off. You can do whatever you want there, right? So resources don't have to map to like a database table or anything. There's some experimental data layers, Ash JSON API wrapper. Let's see if this is, yeah, okay. So this is experimental data layer. It's not really documented very well because it's, again, still, it's not published, but this actually gives you a DSL to map to a JSON API, like an endpoint living somewhere else, and it uses Finch. And I've used that to scrape APIs and things like that before. And it's quite cool, and it really only takes a little bit of work to get this going. So let's see, we're almost there. Okay, I think I answered this one. Yeah, Ash more appropriate for Greenfield. Yeah, it works either way. Like you're gonna have to think about it, right? It's not gonna be necessarily just like a perfect. You're gonna have to think about where you draw your lines and things like that, but it's definitely doable. Okay, let's see. We've got uh, low key wanting to see how generators work. Of course you are, because you're the mastermind behind the tooling we're going to use for it. No, I don't want to get the name wrong. I've only seen it written in chat, but Dorgan has built something called Sorcerer, which is a really useful tool, and I think it's going to be kind of actually a keystone tool for Elixir libraries going forward. Um, and so what we're going to do is Ash generators isn't actually the right word. There's going to be a command line interface and a code API for programmatically creating and manipulating resources, right? So what that means is you'll be able to say things like, mix. It'll be Spark under the hood that does this, because Spark does the DSLs. But you'll be able to say like mix spark.generate, and then you give it a specific thing you want to generate, like a resource or an API or a flow. But then you'll also be able to say like mix spark.add to add an attribute to a resource, or to add a new GraphQL query to a resource. It'll work with any of the extensions that expose configuration on a resource. So what this means is you could you could send somebody a series of commands that would modify their resources in a certain way. And so we can also use this for upgrades. Like when we upgrade something in Ash, we could have an upgrade command that modifies any resources that contain a certain thing, and changes it to like the new thing, that kind of thing. Um, but the command line interface is going to be really cool, because what it means is in tutorials, for example, if we say, okay, create this resource, we can show you the resource, but we can also just give you a command that would create it. And then if we say, okay, add this attribute to the resource, we can show you just the attribute, and we can say, okay, to add that to the resource you add it earlier, you can just run this command and it will modify that resource. So it's going to be really, I think, quite powerful when it's all said and done. Okay, I've got another question here, but before that, let's celebrate a little bit. Woo! We did it. I believe it has now been deployed to Hex, and we probably tweeted about it. Let me see if it got tweeted about. It's funny. It's just getting the automated tweet treatment instead of like a special like look 2.0 happened. But yeah, so we did tweet about it. You can all see the 2.0.0 has been released to much fanfare. So that's exciting. We're out there, and I'll have to fix Ash GraphQL. Ash GraphQL is not going 1.0.0 because there is a flaky issue with the tests at some point. So, but we did it. So we have a bit more work to do, but I'll answer some questions here. It'd be cool if there was more functional stuff in Ash. Like when defining custom actions, Flores, defining custom actions, one could use DSL to define basically a function, and there is custom actions that are behaviors. Um, yeah, so anonymous functions are interesting. It's something that we can add, but we've avoided it up to this point. But you absolutely can do custom actions. Like I can actually show you, like I'll show you just kind of like what it might look like. Um, if I had a resource and I had a bunch of stuff and I said actions do, and I wanted to have like a custom create action. I just say manual true. So, well, it depends. If this resource has no data layer, then all actions are manual actions, right? But let's say it does normally live in Postgres, but you want to do something like with Ecto and an external API or something, and you don't want to use anything built in. You just want to write some code. You could say manual true, and then you just add what's called the change module. So, um, and a change module looks basically, it has a template. It looks sort of like my change. It's think of it like a plug, but for a change set, right? So I would say use ash.resource.change, and I would say change, and I get a change set, I get the ops, and I get the context. And then in here, all you have to do is you have to add an after action hook. It's a little bit sort of counterintuitive, but the ability here exists. So you say after action change set, and then the first you're going to get like nil. Basically, you're going to get, okay, there is no resulting thing, and you're going to get the change set. And in here, your job is to return okay the result, or error. And this is actually sort of like uh, this is the sort of low level way to do it. We can add a behavior, like instead of saying manual true, maybe we say manual implementation. But most people are using this, quite successfully to do manual changes. And this is the sort of thing that, for Coinbase, for example, that's doing they're doing the strangler pattern of their old code. They're using this kind of thing. Um, Let's see. Curious about, from a design perspective, how you think about an Ash API. Do you think it's primarily the data layer, or would you also try to integrate third-party API calls via some sort of before/after hooks? I have a resource that should get synced to SQS after it's created. Yeah, so there's a couple different ways you could do that, right? So Ash isn't doesn't take on that sort of there's one way to do everything philosophy. It's more like a toolbox and some patterns that should enable you to work faster and better. But so the kind of point there is you could use like an after action hook right here on a resource, and you could call in some external API. That's an option, right? Um, but Ash also has a concept of notifiers, and these are really good. So one of the things you often see in when people are sort of relatively inexperienced with Phoenix and they're using PubSub, that kind of thing, um, is they broadcast messages from like a function in like an ecto schema or in their context, right? But then elsewhere, they start a transaction and they call multiple context functions that make some changes and then commit the transaction later, right? And so PubSub actually makes it so that your actions don't compose anymore, because you're still in a transaction. You broadcast a message, some listener somewhere gets a message, oh, hey, they created a new thing, and it tries to read it from the database or operate on it in some way, but the transaction that it was created in hasn't been committed yet, right? So what you need the ability to delegate something until after the transaction has been committed, and that's what notifications are for. So we can say this basically. You could say ash.resource, you say notifiers, um, and yeah, I think change three could be honest. Yes, I think eventually we can do this. It just takes some plumbing to make change three an anonymous function. It takes some plumbing, and Absinthe has done that. That's how their thing basically works. Is they take your anonymous function and they define a function in a module. It's just some metaprogramming. We can do it, and maybe I will. I don't know, because it's not that much different to define a module and put the function somewhere else. Like, and I want to avoid confusion, but I think, if enough people ask for these things, like, we want to be reasonable. We want to make sure that it is ergonomic. And I think that there's no reason why we couldn't do that. So as for notifiers, there's the built-in notifier of PubSub, right? And that's the reason. The way that PubSub works is if you call a bunch of actions, there's a bunch of tools in there to delegate notifications until later, right? So if you were to use like an action like this, you might say, let's say we're creating like a post and you want to create some comments with it. We could add an argument called comments. That's like let's say a list of maps. And then we could say manage relationship comments. Oops. And you can say something like type create. And so what this will do is when you create a post, you could create a list of comments with it, right? And automatically, all of this tooling will gather up any notifications that have happened inside of a resource and will publish them when the outer transaction has been committed. Additionally, if you're doing something in a change, like we had talked about before, if you have a change module, you have the ability to ask for the notifications that have been given from an action. So result, change set. And let's say we like called some other resource, like other resource, create other resource. Well, let's just say api.create. We did some stuff. And then you can say return notifications true. And you're going to get back something like, okay, result notifications. And then you can return from your change, okay, result. And you can return, okay, and we've produced these notifications. And it will gather all of those up to be sent. And you'll actually, if you're writing your own code using transactions, you're going to get a warning, a logged warning if you drop notifications, right? So if you don't use return notifications to get the notifications back, and the code will check, like Ash will check if you're in a transaction and will warn you like, hey, you've got some notifications that you didn't ask for that would have been emitted and aren't in when, so you're going to drop those notifications. They're not going to go over PubSub because they would go in the middle of a transaction. So yeah, I think there was another question that I thought was, somebody asked, when they asked about sort of a visual editor, one of the things you may have noticed is we actually have a custom autocomplete set up for Ash resources, right? So you can see this is actually an Elixir Sense extension that I wrote that automatically gives you autocomplete for the DSL, right? So we don't have a visual editor, but we are writing tools, higher level tools, to allow you to edit things expressively, right? So now I can say, string, and it's not giving me type autocompletion, but that's fine. But I can see like, what are all of the options available in an attribute, right? And this is extremely useful to me when I'm working with resources, because this is the sort of thing you want to think. You say, okay, I have a new attribute. And it's like, let's make sure I've configured it entirely, right? Let's make sure that I've considered all the things I might need to consider about an attribute. So, yeah, you are absolutely welcome, Kyle. Another pattern that I've seen people do is they'll use a custom data layer, or they'll write, like if they have something that just lives elsewhere, then they'll write an external data layer. But notifiers are quite powerful for that. Okay, well let's go ahead and do some more work here. Let's release one of our other packages. We'll do Ash Postgres should get a new release now. And I think we're going to have to do the same kind of annoying thing that we had to do, where it's going to tell us that our next version is 1.1.0. Oh, actually, yeah, that's what I need to do first. I need to point Ash Postgres at the new version of Ash. So, oh, that looks good. That's exciting. 2.0, beautiful. Make sure that test pass and everything. This is actually going to take a minute because the Ash version changed, and so it has to recompile the whole world. But that's okay. All right, let's see. We've got some notifications on Twitter. Anything? Just some people retweeting. Nobody starting conversations. That's fine. And let me check the Discord. I told people on Discord I would check there just in case. Let's see. We've got some new people in the Discord. Hello. I think George just joined. Cool. Well, anybody have any more questions while we wait on these tests? Thank you. Again, the mic list is all I have to go by. I probably mangled it, but um, I agree, Flores. Autocomplete is because I'm the same way. I like to just play with it. I can often be very bad at like just reading the docs because I like to learn by doing. Um, so the autocomplete is a lifesaver for that. The other nice thing is it's all cross-platform because it's an Elixir Sense extension. It just uh, sort of works with the language server, which means like if you're using Emacs or whatever, like you're going to get this benefit too. So it's not like only, which I think it happens quite often nowadays. Only people using VS Code can use this new fancy thing or whatever. Yes, Brett, how can people get involved in Ash? So there's a lot of, you want to look at all the different repos. There's a lot of stuff marked as good first issue. And we care very much about people's contributions and making sure that we are responsive and that we help sort of new contributors and any contributors get things across the line. Um, and so that's one way. I would also say like you don't have to contribute code to be a big part of the community, right? We've got a lot of people who are using Ash. They're part of the community. They're involved in discussions. They help us figure out the direction that things need to go in, and they also tell us more about their real use case and the real problems that they're facing. And for me, that's the future. Like the where Ash goes is always grounded in real problems that real people have, and that's kind of always where we set our direction, right? So honestly, if you just want to build some stuff with Ash, don't feel like obligated, like you need to make a bunch of pull requests or something to be part of the community. It's really not like that. You can just kind of hop in and join and I don't know, talk to us about what you're building. There's a lot of people in there that'll just sort of help answer questions, that kind of stuff. But if you do want to contribute, there's a good first issue tag that you can look at and we have issues across the board that are do that. Just make sure you kind of ask some questions first, just because we've had a couple times where somebody would like start on something and not realize somebody else started, like that kind of thing. So make sure to ask a couple questions, but that will point out sort of a good starting path. Okay, let's see. Uh, we've got another question. Oh, this is a sort of plumbing question, but what does Ash version do? Ash version is just a little utility because often I'll need to test a package. This wasn't me. This is actually Mike Binns that had this idea. Um, but it's like we need to test individual packages against main or against like my local version of Ash. And so this just is like I can say like Ash version equals main, mixdeps.get mix test or something like that, right? And that's a utility. And then it's also used in that test subprojects. There's a Ash CI will clone each subproject and set Ash version to main and run, or it'll say, yeah, it says Ash version to main, and then it will run the CI there. Which I guess actually it needs to set Ash version to, no, it said Ash version to local, I think. That's what it does. Anyway, it's a utility for that kind of thing. Okay, so we've got everything, our test passing here. Improvement, update to Ash 2.0. And let's do our GitOps release. 1.0.1. Am I gonna, no, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go in and massage that like I did just earlier. Let's change log. Okay. Okay. And we'll have this go to the first non-RC version. I'm gonna have to fix GitOps to make it stop doing this. All right, this is 4.3. And again, I'll probably let me make a note here to make these change logs a little bit prettier next time for later. All right. All right. So that's handled, and then in the mix file, mix.x's, we need to set this to 1.0. Okay. And then we're going to commit and tag and release. All right, CI will handle this one as well. Let's take a look there. This will probably go, I don't know, I'll probably be on for another hour or two. Oh no, we had a test failure. What happened? Oh, this is fine. It was testing against, I had updated it to a later Ash. That'll be resolved because now it's using Ash 2.0. So we should be fine. All right, so that'll take some time. We'll babysit this build. Any questions? Maybe if anybody has like just sort of things they want to see how they work, or questions about how you do something specific, or maybe doubts about what Ash is doing wrong or anything like that. I'm not going to try to like talk you into using it, really. Like we want people to use the right tools for the job, and if the right tool for the job isn't Ash for something, then like don't use Ash, right? It's not. We don't want to be in that sort of if everything is a hammer situation. But I am happy to talk about maybe things that we could do better, or things that you don't like about it. My family is excited for me that we're doing 2.0, so I'm texting them back. Okay, this will probably take another 5 minutes or so. Well, let's avoid the dead space. I'll come up with something worth talking about. The migration generator is worth talking about. That's actually what one of the things it is doing right now. But it's quite cool. We have a mix task for this. Generate migrations. And so what this will do is a bunch of docs here, but it'll essentially, what it does is it looks at all of your resources. Say the first time you run it, it'll look at your resources and it'll generate some snapshots that look like this. So they're just these JSON blobs of what the database structure for that looks like right now, right? And then it will actually generate your migrations, right? So this was generated from the state of the resources at the time when we generated migrations. And there's a lot of logic in there for making sure these things run in the right order, for sort of like for things like references, right? So for instance, you have to create the tables before you can create foreign keys to the tables. There's just so much logic in there that should make this work for the most part, sort of just out of the box. Now, for anybody watching this, you have to look at these. Don't just trust that the migrations are right, because this is your data that it's working with, right? So there's a reason that it doesn't just like you deploy Ash and then it just like live fixes your database structure or something like that. There's a reason that we write migration files like this, and it's so that you can look at them. And in some cases, like in some cases you can't just blindly do what the generator does. Like let's say you want to change the type of a column, right? So David Bernheisel is doing this Ecto in production book, and he talks a lot about the patterns that you need to follow when you're deploying with Ecto or with Postgres. And one of those things is like you can't just sort of blindly apply certain migrations, right? So sometimes you're still going to have to modify these or something like that. But the goal here is for us to generate something that will work, especially in development. Like if you're just prototyping or whatever, then it'll work just out of the box. But then later, when you're working against production, you're going to have to sort of hand look at these. But yeah, what it will do is as you make changes, you can generate the next migrations, and it'll just figure out what's different and add another migration. And in this case, we added a unique index to one of the resources, that kind of thing. So quite useful in general. Um, and I'll give you guys a little in. We have Ash Authentication is coming soon, probably sooner than you think. And Ash Authentication is kind of like our version of Mix Phoenix Gen Auth, except it's not like generated. It's a push button solution for authentication that works with Ash resources. So what you would do is you'd create a user resource, and then you would use the Ash Authentication extension, and you'd configure we want to use identity login. That's all that's sorted now, but eventually it's going to be like there'll be social logins and OAuth and stuff like that. Uh, but what's cool about it is if that thing might add attributes to your resource, right? So by default, if you haven't defined a username or email field or whatever you've configured for it to use, it will it'll add that attribute, right? And so if you run the migration generator, you'll see that in your migrations, right? So you get this really nice thing where, and eventually it doesn't do it quite yet, but I think maybe not on first release, but there's going to be the option to store tokens in a database table, just like Phoenix Gen Auth does. And it will generate the Phoenix, or not even generate it, it'll be defined sort of when you compile your user resource, the tokens resource will also be created. That module will be defined under the hood. And so when you run migrations, when you run the migration generator, it'll have you create the tokens table. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different features around authentication that are coming right then. Now we're going to start with like the really simple subset of like username, password, login, right? Because we just want to we don't want to swallow more than we can chew on day one, but that is the plan. And yeah, we're at the end of the day, we're going to want to have even some of the more not esoteric but less common stuff like LDAP integrations or set up so that you can have a SCIM API that'll synchronize users across from some other service or something like that. And we want to support Auth0 and Okta and all that sort of stuff. So let's see. We're releasing Ash Postgres. How exciting. So, I see another question here. So you can do authentication gates. So I wonder, by authentication gates, are you referring to things like authorization policies? Oh, okay, you've got to run. Well, I'll answer your question, and maybe you can take a look at it or I'll answer what I think your question is, and you can take a look at it in the recording if you want to hear the answer. But um, Ash comes built in with a full-featured policy authorizer. It's built into core, and I can show you an example of that. Of what those policies look like. And this is actually, I would say, policies are probably when people get to policies, that's when they're like, oh wow, I can't believe it. Like they realize that the power of these patterns. But let's take a look at the policy test. Policy complex. Let's take a look at comment. Right. So these you can set policies on a resource, and those policies will be applied. Like there's I'm not going to explain all of policies right now, but you can read the docs. But every policy that applies, so in this case, like this is the condition, must pass for a request to pass. But what it will also do is for read type actions, it will actually automatically filter. Generally speaking, if it can, which is most of the time it can, it will compile these to an automatic filter on your read action. So you won't actually get like an unauthorized or a forbidden error. What you'll do is it'll just scope the data for what you can see. So this is a lot of people are using this. Basically, you write a policy like I can only see the things where either I'm the author or I'm the author of the post or I'm one of the friends of the author, right? And what this will do is this will create a filter on the query that automatically makes that true. So it joins to those resources and says like either you're the author or you're post author or you're a friend of the author, and so you don't have to really do any of that work. It just sort of works. Okay, look at that. Ash Postgres is released. That's exciting. Um, I think there's some more packages to release. Yeah, we have Ash Phoenix can go 1.0 today. That's right. And I think, yeah, okay, so Ash Phoenix can go 1.0. However, I was hoping to get there today, but I'm not going to get there today. But Ash GraphQL is not quite ready for 1.0. It's a couple other things we want to do. Um, uh, there's a couple of small things that we want to do that may have some slight breaking behavior, and so that'll be 1.0 probably in the next couple weeks. Brett, have you seen any surprising ways Ash has been used in the wild that you didn't expect? Um, it's a good question. I think I was surprised to see people kind of, something you see eventually is like, everybody's a snowflake, like in a good way. Sorry, not like the politically charged snowflake term, but like every app is special, right? That's the reason somebody's making it. If it was like, if an app already existed that did exactly that, they probably wouldn't be making it. And so I see like often I'll see lots of unexpected things in terms of like, oh, I didn't expect this like small thing to be done this way or this feature to be used this way. Um, but I was surprised to see how early people were building the strangler pattern, um, where they are using like an external service, um, or they're using they have uh, other code in their app that they want to sort of cover. But other people have been using it as a sort of federation layer, right? So if you have an Ash resource and you use Ash GraphQL to create a GraphQL API, those Ash resources can just be backed by calls to the rest of your app and maybe even other services. And it can be a really quick way to get like one GraphQL API set up across a series of services, which is essentially federation. Um, but you have a nice ability to, modify that programmatically or customize how it works or add things in the middle. So you can often use that to migrate from your old system to Ash, that kind of thing. And I was actually surprised to learn somebody in the Discord, it was Tim Smart wrote a really cool package that I didn't even know existed, but is awesome. Um, I don't know if he's ready. Maybe I'm like sort of talking about it before he's ready to share it, but um, he's got it's called Ash Thrift, that gives you tools for working with Apache Thrift. Um, and so sorry Tim if I'm telling people about this before you're ready, but it's quite cool, and it generates the thrift definitions for your resources so that you can use it with Apache Thrift, and it's really quite impressive. It's really high quality. I was surprised he didn't ask any questions. So this is a compliment to Tim, by the way, because he didn't ask really many questions about how to build an extension. He just he figured it out, and it seems quite nice. So very cool stuff. Um, okay, let's do Ash Phoenix. I'm working on something. I will stash this. Okay. Oh, that's right. I need to point. I need to point it at the new hash. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Mark's also in the Discord here. So, Kyle, how Postgres specific is the SQL usage in Ash Postgres? Curious if there's any planned support to SQLite to take advantage of some of the momentum behind live view, fly, SQLite stuff. Yeah. So honestly, that I would consider that a mistake in the sort of original design that I made it so Postgres specific with Ash Postgres. It's really not very Postgres specific at all. it's like there are some cases where we're using those features, but what we could do is, like, I think for aggregates, I'm not sure if SQLite supports some of the features that we're using for aggregates, which for some context I can show. Let's see. We have like let's see what comment titles here, count of comments. So aggregates allow you to sort of yeah, here we go. To basically, aggregate data across relationships for a specific entity. So for example, here we have uh, count of comments containing title, or these are all sort of testing ones, so they're kind of weird, right? But this, you could have count and it show the count of comments. Um, and we might be using some Postgres specific stuff for this. We're using filter. Let's see. Yeah, so we're using, I'm not sure if you can say in SQL, this looks something like, count star filter where name equals title or something like this, we'll just say name equals who, right? So we're using that under the hood for aggregates. So we may need to come up with some different strategies, but realistically, like 85% of Ash Postgres should be extracted out to Ash SQL, that both Ash Postgres and Ash SQLite or Ash, I don't know, SQL Server or MySQL or whatever, that that they can all point at, and that'll serve for like 85-90% of the shared core. And honestly, that's work just waiting for somebody to do it. So if you're interested in potentially making that happen, let me know. I can help you I can help you with what that might look like. I don't really think it's going to be a long road. It's just, when does it happen, right? Okay, so Ash Phoenix is good. Update to Ash 2.0. Oh yeah, I should check. And let's see. Let's make sure that we got our announcement tweet for Ash Postgres. There it is. Postgres Preview 1.0.0. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and release this. See what it does. It's probably going to give me another version number I don't like. 1.2.0. 1.2. Oh, you know what? Because I made a mistake with this, and I was working on 1.1.0 RC. This is a kind of not a fringe package, but it's not core, and I'm wondering like how much I'm going to fight this. Because we already have released 1.1.0. Okay, I will at least make it 1.1.0. There's a lot of stories about how you can kind of screw up package versions, by the way. I'll be talking about one of those stories on a podcast shortly. I'll be recording the podcast with Thinking Elixir tomorrow, and I'm going to tell a story about which some of you may already know, but why Ash is actually going to 2.0 when technically this is the first major release out of beta, even though it's been stable for quite some time. There is a funny story, so you'll have to listen. You'll have to catch a podcast if you want to hear, if you want to actually hear that story. Okay, let's mess with our change set as we have been. Let's see what the first non-release candidate version was. Here it is. All right. Normally I don't have to mess with these, but this time I do. Of course, we're going from v.7.7 to v1.1.0, but these are the things. These are the things we deal with. Okay, so that's fine. Oh, I think I didn't change this little heading when I did Ash Postgres. Let's take a look. Okay, I did. Okay, cool. 0. Okay, 1.1.0, 1.1.0, that was good, and 1.1.0 there. And it's configured. We did this already, I think, to do the next. Yep, we did. Okay. 1.1.0. I can do that in a second. Let's do this. We'll tag it. and we will push. All right, so this one I don't think actually takes very long. I think testing Ash Phoenix is quite fast. Um, Thank you, Mark, for the sponsorship. I noticed that you have just joined to sponsor the project. I really appreciate that. It definitely helps me with helps motivate me for the long, long days and hours, many hours of work that goes into this. Um, I'm sure. So people in the Discord already know this, but to everybody else watching, I haven't really taken a vacation for like 2 years. And I do work. I do put a pretty considerable amount of work into this. So I am excited to announce, unrelated to any of the release, that I will be taking an actual vacation here in a couple weeks. I'm not. I'm going to be like fully unreachable for 1 week. So just you know, fair warning. A couple weeks from now, I'm going to be actually on vacation, like a normal human being. I'm going to take some actual time off. So that's exciting. Um, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see. We want to see Ash Phoenix. Uh, See it releasing. Make sure there's no problems. Okay. Thank you, Mark, and thank you. I've had a lot of conversations with you, but I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sure we've talked a lot in the Discord, but I don't think I've ever heard it said. So I'm going to say it's phonetically it's Jua, but I'm probably saying that wrong. So feel free to correct me on the pronunciation of your name. But you, for context, they've been in the adding some nice additions to Ash and a lot of validation work, which is great for other people because Ash has a big philosophy on validating at compile time, making sure that you're doing the right things. Um, so thank you for the kind words. I'm very hyped for the release as well. Yeah, I don't know. We finally made it. It seemed like it was never going to come. I thought I was going to release 1.0 like a year ago. Um, but for what it's worth, it does a lot more than it was going to do before as well. It's a lot more powerful than I ever really thought that it could be. So I'm really excited to see what people do with it. Okay, let's see. Check on the Discord and see if anybody's got any questions. Is there a fun story behind getting hired at Olympic? There is a fun story. Are you setting me up, Brett? Like, did I already tell you the story and you're just setting me up for success? You might be doing it, but I appreciate it either way. Um, yeah, Brett asked if there's a fun story behind getting hired at Olympic to work on Ash full time. It's I don't know how fun it's really going to be, but I was working on a business that sort of never got out of the stealth mode. We just didn't quite hit the goals we wanted to hit, that kind of thing. Um, but I was kind of poking around, figuring out what I was going to do next, and I had been working with Alembic, doing some small contracting, just kind of helping them with their projects because they were using Ash on a couple of different projects. And I went to Josh and I said, hey, just wanted to let you know maybe some more of my time might be opening up. Um, would you be interested in maybe increasing our arrangement? Maybe adding a couple hours. And his immediate response is, I want all of them, all of your hours. I will take every one that you have. So I thought I was going to be on like a very long journey of figuring out how I was going to get my work properly funded and work with different people. And Josh really stepped up to the plate. Josh and everybody else at Alembic, really stepped up to the plate um, to help bring this to everybody and make it as good as it could be. Um, but yeah, so that journey of discovery was over quite quick because Josh just uh, and everybody at Olympic pulled the trigger. So I'm very grateful. And it is worth noting, there Olympic is we've got a lot of people building things with Ash. If you're if you're looking for uh, more people, or if you're looking for somebody to drive a project with you or for you with Ash, talk to us. We've got some really amazingly talented people. Um, and you can get me to help architect your application and help you kind of drive things in the right direction, and more than you would get if I was just via Discord. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested. Um, sure we could talk. All right, this is actually I thought it was going to be fast, but I feel like it's taking a long time. It's fine. This is, I think, the last. Okay, it was your first time. All right, so Brett wasn't setting me up. That's good. um, but I'm quite excited. I think we're going to do a lot of really good things together, me and the team at Alembic, and a lot of them. What I really appreciate about everybody at Alembic is uh, they're all really good engineers, and they're all really helping find things that are not perfect with Ash, and helping to push, like, because they're all so good at what they do, and they've all been working with Elixir for a long time, and have uh, a lot of experience with the underlying tools and that kind of thing. They've been such a huge asset in improving Ash, right? Not just like, they're not really just sort of using it and being fanboys. Like, it's a lot of collaboration and effort to make sure that Ash is as good as it can be. Um, all right, we're almost there on the release. It's gonna have to compile again, of course. Alrighty. Well, if we have any more questions, I'm um, happy to answer. I think we're reaching sort of the end of the scheduled programming here, now that um, we're going to get Ash Phoenix released. Let me double check. Let me look at the pack. I'm like worried I'm going to forget one of these. Is there anything else ready to go to a 1.0 release? This is close, very close. Ash admin, or Ash, where is it? Ash. Well, you guys might see my archived repositories here, but that's fine. Ash Livebook. This is actually going to end up in core, but we're going to have a bunch of smart cells and utilities for working with Livebook to make so you can make really nice live books backed by Ash. Ash Archival, I think, is already 1.0 again, because I accidentally. Okay, we're on 1.1. Okay, you know what? This one can go. Let's do Ash Archival as well. There's no reason why we shouldn't. Um, all right. Yeah, it's a stupid plugin I have that's like changing these settings, but that's fine. Whatever. Um, let's go ahead and do our same little workflow here. This is going to use 2.0. Right. All right. Well, we're almost at the end of the road here. We're close. We'll get this one released, and then I think we'll call it. This has been very exciting. Thank you, everybody who has joined so far. I want to do a big shout out as well to everybody who's sponsored Ash up till now, um, and Alembic especially. But this really wouldn't be possible without the community coming together to help, illustrate that this is adding value for people, right? Because that's my real goal, is to improve developers' lives, and to make it possible that we can build applications that would otherwise be much more difficult. These kinds of things really motivate me, and I think the communities coming together has really been a huge motivating factor for me to keep this project going. And to everybody who hasn't contributed, from at the sponsorship level, just being a part of the community is such a massive thing. And a lot of the community has come together to help other people, to help other beginners or other people who are new to the framework or new to Elixir. I think our Discord server is quite a wholesome place, with lots of collaboration, and I think it's quite a nice place to be. So I definitely want to shout out the community and the sponsors. All right, this is telling me I got a warning here. I need to get rid of some unused dependencies. All right. Uh-oh, we have test failures here. That's fine. All right, mix deps.unlock unused. We don't have test failures. We have a dialyzer error. Check formatter. Oh, that's right. This thing really does need some updating. This is going to use the Spark formatter. Yes, I agree completely, Brett. If I think the chat's going to be um, available on the video after the fact, but even still, I'll just repeat this just in case. Others are mentioning that joining the Discord chat about anything Ash related or not, you're more than welcome. We've got plenty of people in there talking about just programming or hobbies or their lives, so it's not sort of very restricted. Yes, Jua says, which I probably got the name wrong again, but best part of Ash 2.0 release for me is that I believe people feel much more comfortable promoting Ash. And from that point of view, I'm seeing this as the actual beginning of growth for Ash, which is awesome. I completely agree. I think since we put the started the sort of clock ticking for Ash 2.0 release, we've seen a lot of community growth. And we made it clear like this project isn't sort of like a Yuha. Okay, I'll go for that. I know, like you said, I'm still probably mangling it, but um, so yeah, I do think in a way this is the beginning of growth. Like what we've had so far is we've had a lot of really enterprising people that like to live on the sort of bleeding edge. Um, but even still, we've got people in production. We've got people building their companies and building their sort of mission critical products with Ash. But yeah, I do think that this is kind of the turning point where the growth really starts, uh, especially with sponsorship by Alembic. So to sort of lend some credence here to what we're doing, and it's not just sort of like a madman with a computer making a framework that nobody's going to use, that kind of thing. Okay, let's fix this doc index. Let's fix this dialyzer. I guess actually I can mix update Spark. And we have seen, for what it's worth, we have seen a pretty significant uptick. At least I have in the community growing. Like it's definitely like on the way up, which is quite exciting. Okay. Oh, I'm missing something from this. Name type is it default or target? False. Is that all I needed? Module and target. Oh, target type default for target name and module. Okay. This is actually fine. The problem is ash.dockindex.extension does not exist. Um, okay. We don't actually need this type spec right now. We're just going to release it. Okay, yeah, thanks for joining, Brett. I think we're going to wrap things up here quite soon, so you won't miss much. Thank you very much for joining and for being a part of the community so far. Okay, unused depth dialyzer formatter. I think this all should work now. Let's check it. Check formatter. Okay. Oh, that's right. This is like totally Spark locals without. It's totally old. All right. There we go. And let's make sure, did I update it to 2.0? I did, okay. Update to latest Ash. Let's see, Ash 2.0. Improvement, let's see, chore, fix lint slash. Okay. This will probably give us the right version. It does. Oh no, the tag already exists. Let's see. Did I guess I already released 1.2 of the browser. Says 1.2. Let me see if it's on hex as 1.2, because if it is, then I will have to release as 1.3. Let's see, Ash archival. Okay, it's not. So I can just, this is fine. Okay. Let's see, we got an error when we tried to do this. All right, I will, what did I just get? Status, get diff, get log, where are we at? Let's do, actually, I think it's fine, because the first thing it does is create the tag, so I can just say, makes get up, release again. Nope, that's a problem. Now it thinks we're on 1.2. Okay, let's delete this tag. You guys are getting a crash course in the crap that goes into managing a bunch of different packages. All right. There we go. Everything, oh, 1.2. Cool. So this is the last one. I'll probably end the stream here. I think we're all running out of steam. Things ought to work from here. We'll get this Ash archival point up. It's a tiny extension anyway. So yeah, I want to thank everybody who stopped by. And again, one more shout out to all the sponsors and the community member that got us to this point. And I'll shout out Alembic as well. So anybody who's interested, anybody who's had a good time learning more about Ash, give us a call. I'm sure we can help you with all kinds of different things. Yeah, all right, everyone, thank you again. This was a lot of fun for me, and this will not be the last live stream that we do. I'm sure we'll have another one soon. All right.